Paul Dawson, the captain, said afterwards that he'd had a text from Ethan McLeod's dad the night before, and he kind of went backwards and forwards on whether to tell his teammates. And he decided against it, because he didn't want to put extra pressure on them, didn't want to make them feel as though they had to do it for Ethan. But then when you listen to them talk, that's what they were thinking about. Isaac Buckley-Ricketts said straight away that when the final whistle went, he felt as though Ethan McLeod was there.
We back, like Bruno Fernandes's Twitter hacker. First game victory for Chelsea's new wonder manager. It was only Charlton, lads. Even Nepo babies must look at Liam Rosinho and wonder, how did he get the job again? FA Cup third round weekend was drunk. Manchester City scored 10. Arsenal romped. But holders Crystal Palace, not so fast. Somehow, someway beaten by non-league 6th-tier Macclesfield. Like a 16th seed UMBC beating number 1 seed Virginia in March Madness, but times 100. Bona fide miracle on grass, or at least 4G. Also, week of cup problems for Thomas Frank. First, the Arsenal Coffee Cup. Now the exit from the FA Cup. And the day I hate, when Everton's hope of silverware is extinguished like a tiny candle in a gale storm. And to break it all down, it's a joy to welcome back the man whose football brain is bigger than Nick Voltamada, straight out of North Yorkshire. It's the Crown Prince of Harrogate. It's Mr. Rory Smith.
Just basking in the magic of the cup, Rog.
By the way, magic of the cup trademark, it was magnificent. The little teams filled with no-hopers that we'll never hear of again against the odds tasting victory roar. And by that, obviously, I mean West Ham.
Absolutely. It's great to see these sides that have got no reason to exist whatsoever getting their moment in the sunshine.
It's nice. Even you, West Ham fans, can feel a joy, which, by the way, Everton fans would bite your arm off. But first up, Roar, before we dive in, I do want to acknowledge I was up at 5 a.m. this morning launching the book cover for my new book on Morning Joe. Yes, I've got a new book coming out. It's called We Are the World Cup. Oh, God bless. A personal history of the world's greatest sporting event. Comes out March 3rd, 100 days out from the tournament kickoff. And Raw, you were one of the first people to actually read it.
It is a terrifying insight into your mindset, Rog. That's how I describe it.
By the way, why did I not get you to blurb that on the book cover? Stephen King fans would charge on in there.
It is. I said to you before, it's funny as you'd expect. It's poignant as you'd expect. I have questions about the photos on the front cover, but the main thing is that it somehow made me nostalgic for your memories, and I don't know how you do that.
God, it is. That makes me so happy. The Germans no doubt have a word for being nostalgic for someone else's memories. Look, I wrote this book really as a backstory to the World Cup through my experiences of it. It's kind of written to allow hardcore football fans and also newcomers to relive what has got us to this point as the World Cup's about to come to North America. It's taken me 4 years to write it on plane trips after my memoir, Reborn in the USA. And my promise is, if you read this book, you will know everything you need to know to savour the 2026 tournament, from Maradona's hand of God to Zidane's headbutt, all the way to Lionel Messi's quite epic Greek poem Odyssey to 2022 glory. But you will also learn, as Raw hints, about how 7-year-old Rog was exposed to really the planet of international football for the first time, Technicolor football, by the 1978 World Cup in Argentina, which blew my mind. Also how 11-year-old Rog quite regrettably crapped his pants while watching England in 1982. But Raw, what I realised writing it, I mean, there's also, by the way, the rise of football in America, the rise of Men in Blazers, that stories are all intertwined. The World Cup has been compared to a global eclipse that hits the entire planet simultaneously. I've always adored that. But when I wrote this book, what I love about what you said, I realised the World Cup is really, yes, a football tournament, but it is a shared text that creates the deepest connection for hundreds of millions of us. It is a different way of experiencing our own individual biographies and marking the past in a time.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of those rare things, and I guess the Olympics might have the same effect on people as well. I mean, not me and you, but maybe some people. The trouble at Olympics, you're watching hundreds of things at the same time.
Yeah, World Cup, you're all watching. Oh my God, did Cameroon really just do that to Argentina? Everybody's watching that.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like Gianni Infantino, it's like the 100-meter sprint final, but in every single day throughout a month. And you're right, yeah, it's the Olympics. One of the things that's interesting about the Olympics, actually, is that every country kind of has its own narrative of what's important. So in Britain, we think rowing is the main event of the Olympics because we're good at it.
The sitting down sport.
Yeah, we're good at the middle class sitting down sports, and we're fine with that. We don't think, for example, the Winter Olympics are actual Olympics. But with the World Cup, that's not the case. It is this kind of... It's the only truly collective event we have left. Like, most TV audiences are massively exaggerated, but not really for the World Cup. Billions of people watch. We all see the same thing. We all kind of date ourselves in some way by these tournaments. And it's an amazing, like, notch on the bedpost of our life every 4 years.
It's a spine to our life, Ro. It's a spine. I mean, it is the spine. I'm embarrassed and proud to say that when I meet someone, they say, "Hey, I met you in 2001." I think, 2002, the World Cup in South Korea and Japan. I know exactly where I was then, and it's how I mark time is World Cup to World Cup. I guess like musicophiles maybe use a certain band like Springsteen heads, like use his music to mark their own life, but the World Cup, it is the scale of it. You're right, Super Bowls, God bless. I think 127 million people watch the last Super Bowl. The World Cup final, 1.5 billion with a B. It is the scale of it. It is the world's last collective, please God, joyous experience.
Yeah, do you know what? The thing about time is really interesting. So obviously, as you get older, the numbers of your age mean very little. So, I'm in my mid-40s, but I could easily have just as much in common with someone in their 50s as someone in their 30s. That's how it works. And I get confused by what generation I'm meant to be. So I think I'm technically a geriatric millennial, Rog. But I don't know what that means. When I meet people, the easiest way of working out where they exist in relation to me is, what is your first World Cup? What is the one you remember first? That is how you work out where people stand in relation to you. And it's astonishing that this tournament has that power, that it goes way beyond football. It kind of gets to the core of who we are to an extent.
Well, that is what I wrote about in this book. Two other themes. There is the ecstatic, inevitable, unstoppable rise of football in the United States, which many of you have lived alongside us. Also, you can get the inside narrative of the rise, the accidental rise at the outset of the Men in Blazers media network, which I do think is a symbol of the growth of the game over here. You can also get a sense of the book by reading the introduction, which is on our website now, and sets out what motivated me to write this book. Here's one request. Look, I don't want to go on and on about this, but I will say pre-orders make or break a book. They really do. You guys made Reborn in the USA #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And if I've given you any joy over the past decade at all, it would mean the world to me if you could take a moment and pre-order a copy of this book, preferably at any indie bookstore. I love indies. And if you upload your receipt on the special splash page we just launched on our website, the link's in the show notes, I will send you a signed special book plate right to your house with my love and thanks. Look, I know it's a pain up the ass to pre-order. I really do. It's counterintuitive. Why would you buy something now that you can wait till March the 3rd? I just want you to know I could not appreciate your support more. For you, your friends, your World Cup curious or football mad friends, I wrote this book for you, and support your indie bookstores, America. I'm wearing my Elliott Bay Book Company, Seattle's finest, one of my favourite bookstores in the world. They're actually running a special. You don't just get the book plate if you buy it there. They've designed a special bookmark to mark this book, which blows me away. Big, big love to everyone in Seattle. And GFOPs, email me your favourite indie bookstore, meninblazers@gmail.com. And I'm going to highlight so many through the next couple of weeks on all of our platforms as a big thank you. But that's it. God bless, enough. I'm so sorry to keep going on, but it is a magnificent moment for me. The cover you don't like, Raw.
No, it's not that I don't like it. Are they all pictures of you, or are some of them Napoleon Dynamite?
That's amazing. The cover was done by Roberto Parada, the Wall Street Journal guy who did this for my last book. I loved him so much. What it is, I'm really proud of it, actually. To reflect your thing about time, he took like dozens of photos. There's like 7-year-old Rog, there's 11-year-old Rog, there's frankly quite scary 17-year-old Rog with lots of hair, there's bald Rog. Every World Cup he's got in here, couple with like OG Ronaldo, Messi, Maradona, the Zidane headbutting my sternum, all these legends who've shaped my life. And ultimately, this is what I hope for all of you. dear viewers, that you'll have your own collective memories of yourself through time. Because when I watch football, Raw, and an amazing thing happens. 7-year-old Rog, 11-year-old Rog, 15-year-old Rog is sitting beside me in those moments, just like the same for you, Raw. We're all sitting with hundreds of ourselves.
Yeah, it's amazing how evocative just watching a World Cup match is. And so for all that, this tournament, we've talked a lot about, is it too big? Have they changed the format? Will that have an impact? One of the things is that as soon as it starts, you will cast your mind back to that pure feeling of joy, of like rushing home from school or whatever it is, and watching the World Cup, the colour, the fact that it seemed brighter. And certainly for us, Rog, it seems to take place in these countries where the sky was blue and not grey. It was very confusing.
And people were happy.
They were having a nice time. Why are you people having a nice time? What are you doing?
That was the first World Cup, 1978. The Argentinians threw toilet roll, thousands of them, when their team took the field. And I was just like, oh my God, people can be happy watching football. My mum was like, very practical. She was like, what? Why would people take toilet loo rolls?
Someone's got to clear that up.
I know. But it is. I failed law exams because the World Cup was on. I failed school exams, massive school exams. The World Cup is that. It transcends all of it.
One of my very few abiding memories of University of College was in my end of first year exams. And I went to the sort of university where they took those things seriously, Rog.
Yes, you did. Ro doesn't like to talk about it, but we went to Oxford.
Not that one.
Which one?
Cambridge.
Hey!
There you go.
He never says it. He just...
But if you accuse me of going to Oxford, I will say it. But so you have your exams in this big old building in the middle of Cambridge, and it's all these people sat. I think we were in gowns. I think we had to wear gowns to do them.
What? Just gowns, nude underneath?
Just nude underneath, just full gowns.
Yeah,
full gowns, just everything else flapping.
Never go full gown, listeners.
And you've got all these people, these really, really, intelligent people, and a few of the rest of us who are kind of sitting there writing away, and everyone's really intense. And it was during the 2002 World Cup, and England were playing Argentina, and obviously those games took place in our morning. So it's like 9:30 in the Corn Exchange in Cambridge where we're doing the exams, and the invigilator, the professor, like watching over, taps on the microphone. We'd just like to let you know, David Beckham has scored a penalty. And they kept updating us through the exams, and even I was like, hang on, you have got your priorities wrong. You cannot be telling us the score. It was extraordinary. Then it was at half time. It is England 1, Argentina 0.
By the way, these are in the midst, dear listeners, of massive exams which would shape the future of Rory's life. And you can see a straight line between why Rory was once a prodigy at Cambridge and why he's now slumming it with me.
I naturally assumed that the football was more important.
That's so funny. I won't go into the story of where I was, but that's the joy during that game, but I write it in the book. That's the joy of it. We all know where we were for each one of these, and the collective memories are bloody thrilling. I want to get into the football. I could talk about this all the bloody time with you, but I have to start with the toast, raising my first pint of Michelob Ultra to Barcelona, who won a wild Spanish Supercopa yesterday, 3-2 against Real Madrid. 2 goals from Rafinha, another from Old Man and the Seas, Robert Lewandowski, enough to overcome strikes from Vinicius Jr. and Gonzalo Garcia. Also remarkable, Lamine Yamal, who was the face of pretty well every Barcelona piece of content out of the locker room in the aftermath, mocked by Courtois and many of the Real Madrid stars after they'd won the first Clásico of the season. Simply gained revenge by leading his team to victory in this one. Raw, kid has won La Liga twice, Copa del Rey, Supercopa twice, the Euros, and is still just 18. We are witnessing, I believe, I don't like to be hyperbolic, but a historic child prodigy at the levels of Wolfgang Amadeus, Joan of Arc, if you will, Stevie Wonder even. It is historically monumental. It's in that bracket.
There was a pass that Yamal played in the first half just before Rafinha's first goal, and Rafinha sort of spooned the chance. It cut out, I think, 6 Real Madrid players. It was an absolutely extraordinary piece of vision and execution. And yeah, I agree with you. I think Yamal's in a difficult position because obviously the natural comparison is with the guy you're not allowed to mention. And it's hard to live up to that.
Tyler Dibling.
Voldemort. Sorry. We're in the midst of Harry Potter 7 at my house. It's very stressful.
Tyler Dibling.
It's difficult because you're kind of comparing him to probably the greatest player of all time. But if you look at what he's won, if you look at what he does in games, if you look at the responsibility he takes, he's clearly an extraordinarily special player. And I think those comparisons aren't something he should be afraid of, particularly.
I know it's amazing. We live in an era, obviously I'm the most guilty, of overhyping footballers. We almost underhype Lamine Yamal, even though he is utterly transcendent, and in every conversation he is that singular and for utterly real. One more quick piece of business. Bay Area, San Francisco, we're coming to you. We've just announced a live show in your magnificent city before the Super Bowl for the Men in Blazers World Cup Countdown Tour. 127 days out live, presented by our friends at Bank of America, official bank of US Soccer, and the FIFA World Cup 26. Tickets are now on sale. Come and be with us February 4th, coming into the Bay Area like a fully stacked and packed mission burrito to talk about all that is to come at the Copa das Copas. We've got some incredible guests. Can't wait to be with you. Find the link to tickets in the notes below. Come and have a glass with us to the football. Let's start with the shock of shocks. Raw, Macclesfield 2, Crystal Palace 1. Behold, a bona fide miracle. God bless Palace. Second year on the run. They find a way to reinforce the trademark magic of the FA Cup. Very different way this year. 117 league places separate these two teams in the English football pyramid. Crystal Palace, FA Cup defending champions. They are in Europe. And Macclesfield are, well, they're sixth tier. We'll get into them in 1 second. But first, what is a Macclesfield, Raw? If you would describe the town, what is a Macclesfield?
Macclesfield is actually a relatively well-to-do place in the golden belt of Cheshire. So Cheshire's the little bit of the north of England that is just south of Manchester, kind of parallel-ish with Liverpool, I guess, but inland.
Parallel-ish geographically, not mentally or economically.
Do you know what? Actually, that's quite a good way of putting it. Cheshire is where the footballers live. Generally, that is where the footballers live.
For Liverpool, it's like horsey people, rich toffs live there, and now footballers.
Yeah, and Macclesfield is it's a town that has its challenges, obviously. Historically, I think it was in the silk trade. The team are the Silk Men.
Great nickname.
But Macclesfield's a nice place. Macclesfield is a kind of middle-class town, 20, 30 miles south of Manchester, that is both industrial but also quite refined. Do you know what? It's a little bit, Rog, it's not quite as good, but it's a little bit like Harrogate.
Yes, it is. It is the Harrogate of the South. Is it South? I don't even know where these things are all relative. You're right, it is known as in the Industrial Revolution era, it was the centre of the silk trade. Now, I think it's the HQ of AstraZeneca, modern silk, if you will. Also, music fans, Joy Division, founded in Macclesfield. It's where the great late Ian Curtis lived, and I think it's buried super close. But the club are a fascinating story in their own right. Historic club, Macclesfield Town, went bankrupt in 2020. Macclesfield FC were reborn immediately as the Phoenix Club from the ashes, put immediately into the bottom of the pyramid. Had to start, I think, in the 9th tier Northwest Counties Premier Division. 3 promotions in 4 seasons. Lifted them to the heady heights of the 6th tier. Then making their way back. Managed by John Rooney, Wayne's brother, former New York Red Bull legend. And by legend, I mean, I think he played 5 times for them. Actually, was at one of those games. Gent has had a long journey to the spotlight, played for 11 clubs, mostly innocuously, before washing up at the Silkman. So that's part of the story. But the team, they play on a synthetic pitch, 4G, at Moss Road, 5,300 capacity, the changing room for this superstar Palace side. It was like one you'd find at a local YMCA, super old school bare bones. That is part of the FA Cup leveller. Cold showers, Palace, for once, Raw, the big boys. This is 6th tier. It's part-time football, right? Their squad includes a podcaster, Hope for You and Me, a gym owner, property developer, even 2024 Love Island winner Tom Clare. I mean, their captain Paul Dawson resigned from his job as a highway supervisor to focus on his football. Can you give some context as to who these human beings are for us?
Yeah, Macclesfield are a slightly odd mix because, as you say, they're 6th tier where most teams are still semi-professional, so they'll get a fee for playing in a game and they'll have their expenses covered, but they are not professional footballers. That is not always their primary job. But they also have a decent amount of money because their benefactor, the guy who rescued them from liquidation and set up the Phoenix Club, a guy called Rob Smethurst, who I think made his money in, I think he owns a couple of fashion brands.
Yeah, and he said, by the way, he was drunk. He was on a 4-day bender when he agreed to buy the club, which in its own, wheels within wheels, incredible story.
There's a life lesson in there, but maybe not one people should follow. But
by the way, every time I've been on a 4-day bender, Raw, I brought a football club.
That is how you ended up owning Lazio. So in that squad, there are people like Paul Dawson, the captain, who is a kind of non-league football stalwart who's been around for a long time. He's played for various kind of clubs that will attract crowds in the hundreds. But you also have Cameron Borthwick-Jackson, who played for Manchester United. You had on the bench on Saturday a guy called Max Waltman, who has played in the San Siro in the Champions League for Liverpool. You have kids who came through at the academies of, I think, Man City, Man United, Newcastle, Villa, who are kind of the products of England producing so much young talent now, that some players who don't quite make it, and it might be through injury or whatever, they do wash down to the 6th tier. And that makes it sound like Macclesfield are kind of not really underdogs. But then you have to remember the scale of this, the scale of the difference between the clubs. So as you say, Palace, Premier League, Europe. Macclesfield 6th tier, 117 places between them in the pyramid. The FA Cup has been running for a long, long time, Rog. It's getting on for 150 years, I think more. This is mathematically the biggest shock that has ever happened. A team from that low down has never knocked out a team from the top flight. So Macclesfield, they did have a few players who wouldn't have been kind of staggered by the standard of the Palace players. But the chances of them winning that game going into it were basically zero.
Yeah, I mean, Palace, by the way, fielded, I think, 3 of the stars for their FA Cup winning side. Adam Wharton, returning from injuries, Chris Richards, and their captain, Mark Gahey. First half was honestly like watching elite wrestlers walk into, a dive bar and just have their teeth kicked in by a group of Hell's Angels who decide to fight with bite chains and flick knives. First year captain of Macclesfield, Paul Dawson, head bandaged, at least a powerful header to set the world in motion. It felt in the moment, it was like, oh, that's nice for them when it happened. But then, around the hour mark, 2-0, Isaac Buckley-Ricketts, once of the Manchester City Academy, scored probably one of the scruffiest, most hacked, ricocheted, failed clearances, huff and puff. It's like, if you watch under-7 football regularly, you see a lot of these goals. The flick to finisher. My old coach, when we were under-7, used to scream, "Boys, bees around the honey pot," which I never quite understood, but that's what it took this goal for me to understand. But it doesn't matter. Every single goal counts the same, Raw. 2-0. This was, for me, sporting-wise, up there with staying up all night to watch Buster Douglas knock out Mike Tyson while wearing cleats. It was that astonishing.
Yeah, every generation has an FA Cup shot that kind of echoes through history. And at 2-0, you start to think, all right, this might be the one for Generation Alpha, I suppose.
Is that where you're very good at your generations, Ro?
I think that's where we are now.
Not sure what generation I'm in. I think I'm in the greatest generation. Didn't we fight the Second World War or something? Yeah, I can't even remember anymore. Yeah. How did it happen then? Here's the big question. And I know Palace are so exhausted. They are so run down. They were utterly stunned. But the football that Macclesfield play is very, very different, right? I mean, Macclesfield lower league football is less about systems and tactics and space and movement. It's really clench fist football. It's intensity. It's physicality. It's intensity. It's physicality. It's kicking the nuts, gripple grapple. It was like one of those fish out of water trading places movies where you have a rich banker stripped of his penthouse life by fate and forced to live on Skid Row, and he just can't handle the indignity and the medieval nature of it all, Raw. It was remarkable to witness.
Yeah, it's about duels. Football lower down is about duels. It's about, can you get the better of the player you're facing? It's about winning tackles. It's about being, as you say, intense, going in hard, sticking at it, and organisation. That requires tactical and technical discipline. And ultimately, I think on those occasions, the reason you get cup shocks is because, for Macclesfield, for most of those players, that is the biggest game they will ever play in. And that means the world to them. So they have that little extra edge that overcomes all the massive differences between talent and conditioning and all that stuff. And for Palace, I think if you can match that, then you win because you are better at football. But if you can't match it, just occasionally, you get caught out.
Yeah, we have to say Macclesfield also were playing for the memory of their teammate. A real tragedy. 21 days ago, before kick-off, a former Wolves striker in their squad, Ethan McLeod, age is 21, passed away in a road crash after a game. His memory hung over the day in the build-up. We talked about it in length on our Friday preview Raw. The team had a banner of McLeod in their locker room before the game. His parents were both there. I can't imagine what they experienced over the course of not just the 90 minutes, but the entire day. But one can only imagine the almost superhuman motivation that provided for them collectively.
It was interesting, Paul Dawson, the captain, said afterwards that he'd had a text from Ethan McLeod's dad the night before, and he kind of went backwards and forwards on whether to tell his teammates that Ethan's dad had texted him. And he decided against it because he didn't want to put extra pressure on them, didn't want to make them feel as though they had to do it for Ethan. But then when you listen to them talk, that's what they were thinking about. Isaac Buckley-Ricketts said straight away that when the final whistle went, he felt as though Ethan McLeod was there. And everyone reacts differently to grief, obviously. It's an intensely personal thing. But the fact that they were able to use it and try to use that one game to honour their teammates, someone who the manager, John Rooney, has described as kind of the life and soul of the party, a really, really kind of engaging, charismatic figure, is tragic and poignant, but it's beautiful.
May his memory continue to be a blessing for all who knew him. But for Crystal Palace, I mean, we've talked about this brewing for the past couple of weeks. They've had a disastrous run of form over Christmas, small squad, too many games, almost victims of their own success. Oliver Glasner, huge credit. He talked about afterwards, he could not explain it away. Or find any kind of an excuse. He said to find an excuse would be completely wrong, adding that it was almost like watching David take out Goliath. Those were his words. He unleashed Brendan Johnson, Will Hughes, Tyreek Mitchell. The Palace got one back after a quite stunning free kick in the 90th minute, but they would get no further. And Macclesfield became the first non-league club to eliminate the champions in 117 long years, back when Wolves... Oh, well played. Script writers were knocked out by, wait for it, Crystal Palace back in 1909. Magical to watch the final whistle. If you've not seen these scenes, find them. It will make your day, your week, really. Rooney, the manager, embracing his assistant, Francis Jeffers, an Everton starlet who burnt out almost immediately the moment he moved to Arsenal. Wayne Rooney, almost crying in the broadcast booth as he interviewed his brother, just bursting with pride. The pitch invasion, accompanied by, this is my favourite part, the PA system blaring, please stay off the field, fans, please stay off the field. But if you actually looked, it was the club's chairman, the guy who brought the club after that 4-day drinking event, who was the first fan to charge the field. It was all chaos, cacophony, joy. It was beautiful, Raw.
Yeah, it was extraordinary, and it's really hard not to be swept up into cliche and into hackneyed kind of nostalgia, and that is what the FA Cup does. It is one of those things that where just occasionally the everyman take on the elite and they win, and it reminds you why, for all that the competition status has changed in the last 20, 30 years, for all that it's not what it was in like certainly the British imagination, it doesn't attract the attention of the Premier League. It doesn't drive traffic and drive interest and all that stuff. It's not an obsession. There's a reason why third round weekend is something that you look forward to. I think of the first weekend of January, regardless of context, as FA Cup third round weekend. It's really, you can't stress how much of a date it is in the kind of football cultural mindset.
I think of it as a damp squib disappointment end of Everton's extinguished hope. That's so I'm being serious. That I realised. I didn't know I did. But it was one of the most outrageous outcomes that football has given us, Raw. Holders beaten by a team whose entire starting 11 is worth, I think, less than $1 million combined. I'm terrible at ranking things. You are much better than I am. This was instantly hailed as the biggest FA Cup upset ever, trademark. Quick one, was it?
Well, statistically, yeah, because the gap between the teams was the largest of any upset that there has been, because there are 117 places below them, first tier side to knock out a top flight side. So, in a sense, I think you should probably look at it and say, like, rationally and calmly, yes, it is the biggest shock of all time. It didn't feel that way to me, I've got to admit, just because we've got so used to Premier League teams not really taking the FA Cup that seriously. You know, Palace only started 3 or 4 first teamers. So it kind of creates this impression that they don't really care. But at the same time, I think it's really easy to forget. Like, Palace aren't bringing a load of academy kids who are 16, have never really played any senior football on. They're bringing on players in to replace the first teamers who are vastly expensive, on huge amounts of money, and meant to be some of the most gifted footballers in the world. And they're going to Moss Rose in front of a crowd of 5,500 people and being beaten by a team in the 6th tier. So it didn't feel quite as special to me as like Sutton in the late 1980s, which is one of the early ones that I remember, or Wrexham beating Arsenal in 1992. But maybe that's just I was a kid then. Maybe it's just I'm an adult now. In terms of sheer numbers, if it's not the biggest, it's not far off.
I agree. Clinically, it was the greatest of all time. But there was something emotionally dim by the fact it was Crystal Palace who were the defeated team. It's normally when we like to laugh at the defeated team, we like it to be Arsenal, we like it to be Liverpool, we like it to be one of those teams that you can point out like Nelson Muntz in The Simpsons and go, ha ha. You can't really do that for Crystal Palace. They still have this. It's like laughing at a puppy. So it took some of it off. But I will say, the loss of Ethan McLeod gave this so much human depth. It's incredible how it resounded. I mean, the Men in Blazers Discord was utterly buzzing. Old Goat wrote, I have found my new favourite 6-tier team, which I just love. And I do believe the number of Macclesfield jerseys purchased in America over the course of the 90 minutes must have been magical. Also want to hail Crystal Palace, who quite classily allowed Macclesfield to keep 100% of the ticket sales for the game rather than claiming their share. Incredible gesture by the Palace. They also gifted them the win off 28% possession, no less. Raw, I'm going to give you the final word, though, on this and what it teaches.
I guess, do you know what? The whole Palace arc in the FA Cup over the last year teaches us how much this competition means. It has been, Palace won't see it this way today, but maybe in time they will. It has been brilliant for the FA Cup because by winning it last season, they kind of showed that none of these competitions have a set meaning. They mean what we decide they mean. So to Palace, that was the most important thing in the world. It was their first ever trophy, their first ever major trophy in 120 years as a club. So suddenly the FA Cup becomes this thing that is aspirational and desirable and important. And I think there'll be a lot of clubs who are, similar in similar league positions to Palace, thinking, quite fancy winning the FA Cup. Maybe finishing 7th instead of 8th in the Premier League is not that big a deal. But then the magic of the Cup gives and the magic of the Cup takes away, doesn't it? Because then what happens over the weekend is you are reminded once again of the ability of this tournament to kind of surprise us, delight us, and make fools of us all. And you get this moment that isn't just for a team and for a fan base, but is for a town, the town of Macclesfield. And to be honest, it's for all the small towns who've got non-league teams. Because one day it could be you. We used to have, do you remember the lottery adverts here, Rog?
No.
With the giant, when we launched the National Lottery in the 90s, there was a giant finger that came out of the sky in the adverts, and it pointed at someone's head and went, it could be you. I think it was Bob Hoskins doing the voice.
Good Lord.
It could be you. And that's what Macclesfield say. If your team is in the 5th or 6th tier of English football, maybe even the 7th, you might get your day. The FA Cup might give you the platform to do something that echoes through the ages.
God bless. It could be you, not you, Everton. By the way, Palace, real moment of existential angst for them. 9 games without a win, all competitions. You got the manager, Oliver Glasner, said to be thinking about his next move, refused to sign a new contract. Mark Gahey, linked to every major club in football. You nailed it. For Palace to soar so high last season, to beat Manchester City in the final, win first ever trophy, delirious scenes, memories forever, and then soil themselves so completely at the first hurdle. It's a reminder that in football and in life, joy is fleeting, nothing is forever, darkness and light are intertwined. You got to savour the high with all your heart and not take a second for granted. I read a beautiful piece this morning. Someone who works in the club's commercial department, I think it was a man called Bob Trafford, said, what we did at Macclesfield this weekend will outlive us all. When we're dead and gone, people will still reflect on that day. It's the closest thing to immortality you will ever get. That's a reward for all the hard work. That is true, and it is utterly beautiful. That's what we saw on Saturday. From that to something else beautiful. Hope for Chelsea fans. Charlton 1, Chelsea 5. Cometh the hour. Cometh the slightly unexpected man. Liam Rosenior swooped into the Chelsea hot seat, sounding less football manager, more kind of like New York Times cultural critic at large, declaring he can prove himself to be a success as Chelsea's new head coach, claiming, "I'm not arrogant, I'm good at what I do." And you ask my mates, who I'm still friends with, go to school in Bristol, I managed the school team at 11. I was doing shapes with the coach on the school field after school. These are powerful boasts. They're almost like Ricky Gervais, David Brent, the second set. And I don't know what you thought of his opening press comments, Raw, but I did feel like we're seeing a gent who is definitely intelligent, empathetic, ambitious, but he has managed less than 100 games. It's almost like seeing someone try and fake it till he makes it.
Yeah, I don't want to be harsh, Rog. I don't want to kind of pick up on the things that he said in what must have been a really stressful, really difficult situation and read too much into them. It felt like there was an element of self-justification about them, which made me slightly awkward. And I'm not sure is necessarily the sort of thing that will go over well either with Chelsea's players or, and might be even harder to win over, Chelsea's fans. That's the bit where I think there might be a problem. The players will decide. If you speak to any player, they will say that they will know within the first 10 or 15 minutes of training whether Liam Rosenior is right to be Chelsea manager, if they will respond well to him. And if that goes well, then he'll have the players with him for as long as he can. Ultimately, there's a point where that might not happen anymore. But he will win the players over. I think the fan base will look at a guy who's 41, who's only ever managed either in the Championship or in France, who's been parachuted into one of the biggest clubs in the world, and see him justifying his position. And I think that might make some of the fans certainly a little bit cynical. I
think it goes well as long as the results go well, the comments will be forgotten. But the moment we hit turbulence, they're going to be flung back in his face. And I think he's really meant to be. People I know who know him say he's a fantastic human being. It's really about whether he's a fantastic Premier League manager. That's what we're about to see. He is, I will say, as unexpected a hero to me. Plucked from obscurity to stave off disaster. Again, I don't like to be hyperbolic. I was trying to think what it reminds me of. And it's like in that series Chernobyl, there was that kind of random low-level Soviet engineer like Alexei Anonenko or someone like that who volunteered to enter the flooded kind of radioactive depths of Chernobyl's power plant to open the valves and stop there being a second larger disastrous explosion. Again, don't like to be hyperbolic, but that's how I see Liam right now. I do want to say, there is a real power in his appointment that we have to note. He is just the 12th black manager in Premier League history. Let it be noted, Chelsea were the first Premier League club to appoint a black manager in Ruud Gullit back in 1996. There should be so many more when you look at the player pools in football. Raw. Only other one right now is Nuno at West Ham.
Yeah, no, it's been a long-running, ongoing stain on English football and European football more broadly, but particularly English football, that the sheer number of black players in the game for the last 30, 35, 40 years has not translated into managers. And early on you could kind of say, well, look, it maybe takes time, that you need the generation of players to come through first and then they will develop into managers. We are way beyond that point now. We are way beyond the point where it should have started to translate. The fact that it hasn't is, I think, down to, I'm going to be naive and say, like a tacit cultural prejudice rather than an actually outspoken one. But it's time for it to change, and hopefully, even if you take away the club kind of loyalty element to it, hopefully Liam Rosenior is the start of that.
Yeah, to a time very soon when we don't even have to note this anymore. It is hard to note too much from this game against Duffers Charlton. 7 defeats in their last 11 in the Championship. This was, for Chelsea, a much-changed team to the one that lost at Fulham midweek. Adebayo, Caicedo, Andre Santos kept their place. But we don't know how many of these players were starting because Rosenior loves them or because he was resting them for the Arsenal Carabao Cup semi-final that looms midweek. The game kind of over the moment Hato flashed home on the stroke of half-time. God bless Liam, coaching genius. First goal for Hato, 19-year-old Dutchman who'd honestly struggled under Maresca. In that moment, it was like, go away, rubberneckers, nothing to see here. Cunning header from Tosin made it 2-0. Felt triumphant for about 7 minutes. Charlton got back into it. Miles Lieburn smacked to Jorgensen. A lovely moment for Charlton and a young man who came through the Chelsea Academy. Symmetry felt interesting. But then Mark Guiu restored order almost immediately. immediately. Pedro Neto, off maligned, lashed home late off the bench, and an Enzo penalty. Last kick of the ball gave a triumph winning start. He's going to win it all, Raw. He is the first Chelsea head coach to win his opening game since Antonio Conte in 2016. He was clear post-game. He did nothing tactical, nothing technical. Those were his words. A suggestion. Ultimately, this half season is going to be about confidence building, man motivation. Raw.
Yeah, he kind of seems to say that the problem that led to him getting this job wasn't to do with tactics or technical ability. And I think the technical ability thing is obvious. I mean, that Chelsea have got loads of good players. He seemed to kind of allude to it being maybe more to do with morale, happiness, contentment, understanding, communication. And look, it's the main thing you can say about beating Charlton in the FA Cup is he has managed to sidestep that particular trap. The problem is for Liam Rosenior that, as you say, you have a Carabao Cup semi-final coming up. You have Premier League games that will not be quite so kind. The issue will be, how does everyone respond when he gets to a difficult patch? It's fine to say it's all about communication and, squad building exercises for now. At some point, someone will want him to be able to outthink Mikel Arteta, and that is a really high bar.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was fascinating too. He was really quick to praise the quality of the squad that he's inherited. Also, he praised at length Maresca's management. As you've said, the slightly more complex Carabao Cup clash against Arsenal midweek is going to be fascinating. Then Brentford next weekend. And I agree, the test for Rosenior is going to be how he handles, frankly, how he survives the first losing run. Multiple game losing run when all of this is thrown back into his face. He's a charming man, super articulate, super intelligent, but that lack of experience is going to be flung back into his gob by the media. Make what will be a storm for a normal manager will be turned up to a barbaric hurricane. It's going to be fascinating to witness. As was, talking about managers, Manchester United 1, Brighton 2. Oh, there is no respite since Ruben Amorim's firing last Monday, which appears, honestly, to have taken about 10 years off the Portuguese. Facially, he looks incredible. He's walking about beaming. He's like a man reborn. I guess being fully paid out will do that to you, but not you, United. They've gone back to vibes, Raw. DNA. Midfielder Darren Fletcher with Johnny Evans alongside him as an assistant. Almost a return to the historic days. It's a very United move. We've seen it a lot in times of turbulence. I look at it and I'm like, restoring a relic will no more bring back the glory for Manchester United than excavating a fossil and holding it up and saying, I'm going to bring the dinosaurs back.
Have you not seen Jurassic Park? That's exactly what happened.
Do you think Sir Jim Ratcliffe thinks that's a documentary?
He might think that's like a hard-hitting documentary.
Yep,
Maybe that's the problem.
Get me Attenborough.
Get me some amber with the genetic code of Nicky Butt in it.
I think
I don't know why that's a weird image. Sorry.
Amber with a bit of butt. Yeah, we're able to solve it.
No, so I'm torn on this because I think to an extent when you fire your manager, and you could definitely make a case that Amorim should have been fired. You need someone who's kind of in the club who can just take charge of things for a bit. What I find baffling is that United are going to replace one interim with another interim who's exactly the same interim. It's either Ole Gunnar Solskjaer or Michael Carrick, who are ticking the same boxes. They are people who have Sir Alex Ferguson's phone number, who link United to the past, and will kind of muddle through until the end of the season, I guess, if they can, if that's the plan. But it's such a strange way for a team that is, at least in its own imagination, and by some metrics, the biggest club in world football, to behave. It's such an odd thing that they're back here again.
Yeah, they're like, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, and they're taking that so literally. Is just insane. And for what it's worth, the game, Kobbie Mainoo started for the first time since that Carabao Cup exit to Grimsby in August. He was quite quiet. Brighton manager Fabian Herzl rotated heavily. United opened brightly, which was a reality that preceded unfortunate events on 12 minutes. Danny Welbeck, talk about him in a minute, fine run. Cut open the left flank, floated the ball to Rutter, who artfully headed, cleared off the line only for the young German Brian Gruda to sweep home. United had plenty of possession, but no composure. Old Trafford became, this was the astonishing part, utterly silent. No noise, anything. Even before Danny Welbeck killed off the game, muscling off Yoro's challenge, bashing the ball home with joy. He's 35. He's irrepressible. Remember, he joined the Manchester United Academy aged 8, played for the first team there for just under 6 seasons, and has come back to haunt United. Scored against him 8 times. I think his joint most in his career. And he loves nothing more than to celebrate those goals. Raw, the rules... You can celebrate a goal against your old club when that old club is Manchester United. In fact, you're compelled to.
Do we know how long Welbeck has been celebrating goals against United? Because I was quite struck by the fact that he did. Danny Welbeck is a boyhood Manchester United fan, and I think he's always been one of those players who is kind of indelibly associated with Man United. Even while he's been playing for Arsenal and Brighton, you still sort of think of him as being a Man United player, as though he's on like a spiritual loan, that at some point he'll go back. So it was odd to me that he chose to celebrate. But maybe...
This is where we are now.
Maybe enough time passes.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know, do you have to not celebrate your first couple of goals and after that it's a bit, all right, well, this is a bit silly now, let's just get on with it?
Listeners, if you know how it works, write to us at meninblaze@gmail.com. When you said he's on a spiritual loan, I cannot wait for Danny Welbeck to be interim manager after they fire the next guy.
Get Danny in.
Yeah,
player interim manager.
Ancelotti was crap. He doesn't understand us. Get Danny in. Danny Welbeck, enter. Shesko gave United fleeting hope, but United's day of frustration really summed up by 2 yellow cards in 2 minutes for young Shea Lacey. Yet 18-year-old right winger who grew up supporting United, reminds many Academy insiders of one Phil Foden, who's coming on the show this week. He dazzled midweek Lacey against Burnley, gave a little pattern of youthful, entertaining DNA youth being back, but in this one, 2 yellow cards in 2 minutes. First for a challenge on Ayari, second for slamming the ball away in frustration. Off he went, optically harrowing. The fans gave him a round of applause as he was red carded, but he was not the only one to exit early. Brighton march on. United, these statistics are shocking. Out in the third round for the first time since 2014. The United correspondent at Andy Mitten tweeted, the latest stinking result at Old Trafford sees Manchester United exit the FA Cup at the first hurdle. Same in the League Cup. It means United will play only 40 games this season, the lowest number in 111 years. Abysmal. Also, earliest in a season that they've been assured of finishing trophyless since 1971. Raw. It is generationally bad, and to lose to Brighton, a club who are so organised, so structured, who get everything right, managerial appointments, recruitment, overachievement, it almost stings more.
Yeah, the Brighton are kind of the club that have everything that Manchester United just can't have, effectively. And obviously United got the history and the power and the money and all that stuff, but Brighton are the gold standard for how a club is run, and United must look at them and think, how on earth do we get from where we are now to what they are now? It seems a world apart. It's
astonishing. Obviously, the scale, one cannot be the other. Yeah. But also, how, at this point, we're asking, how have United created a culture that's the opposite of everything Brighton over the past 13 years? Every appointment's felt like chain reaction, knee-jerk, worse than the last. Sped up under Ineos. The new controlling owners who backed Ten Hag, then sacked him, appointed Dan Ashworth to the front office, then quickly sacked him, promised Amorim 3 years, then sacked him on a full payoff. The club's worst results in 50 years. The plan for replacing Amorim, a man whose departure has seemed glaringly obvious for at least a season. No plan in place, 15th place finish, no European football, and now this season of 2 cup games total domestically, shortest season in 100 years. Raw, it still feels like they're making it up as they go along.
Yeah, there doesn't appear to be any kind of plan, and I think this has been said before about United, but the next appointment is vital. There is a point where you have to stop getting things wrong. You can't keep on kind of trying, failing, starting again, without losing an amount of ground that eventually becomes insurmountable, no matter how much money you have, because those teams that are ahead of United, they're all still moving forward. They're signing players, they're recruiting managers, they're putting plans in place. United seem to constantly be like scrabbling just to tread water. And I think there's a moment where that doesn't become enough, and it creates this sort of cycle around the club where everything feels so intense and so pressurised and so urgent all of the time that you can't make good decisions in that kind of ecosystem, in that environment. United have to find a way to break it. But I don't know how they do it, and I don't think they know how to do it.
I think they should appoint whoever hacked Bruno Fernandes' Twitter account and spent much of last night tweeting things like, let's get rid of Ineos.
But whoever that was had a whale of a time. The highlight of that, and obviously this is a crime and we don't approve of it, Rog, but the highlight was Manchester United put out a tweet from their own official account saying Bruno Fernandes' account has been hacked.
So supporters should no, the phrase is something like supporters should not interact with it.
Supporters should not interact with it, and the first reply was from the hacked Bruno Fernandes account that said something along the lines of, "Oh no, I'll let everyone know."
Yeah, and then he came back and said, let's ratio Manchester United. And he promptly ratioed Manchester United. It's remarkable symbol of this moment. I'm pretty sure, I don't like to be a snitch, but I'm pretty sure the hacker was Alejandro Garnacho. It's got his fingerprints all over it.
I mean, the only thing I'd say, Roger, is there's an awful lot of famous people who claim to have been hacked when maybe they haven't been.
That theory, I just love. God bless Manchester United, who are currently the only club in football with more own goals even than the Arsenal. This loss, the continued defensive vulnerability, I think sullies the glimmering prospect that Darren Fletcher can prove he belongs. Rumours this morning suggest former club icon Michael Carrick will return to Manchester United to be the interim to the interim, which you just can't even make up. Carrick's experience, 3 seasons at the Championship level with Middlesbrough. Godspeed to him. There's obviously rumours of a grown-up appointment being permanent after the World Cup. Carlo Ancelotti, Thomas Tuchel, Pochettino abound. But I do think true haters will find real pleasure in the fact that Marcus Rashford won a trophy. That Spanish Supercopa, the very day United were doomed to be trophyless, which reminds me of that great Muhammad Ali quote, I believe in the eye for an eye business. I'm no cheek turner. I got no respect for a man who won't hit back. You kill my dog, you better hide your cat. I don't know what it means, but I love it. Manchester City await next weekend. What could possibly go wrong? And talking of Man City, Manchester City 10, Exeter City 1. City have no chill against League One NPCs. I will say City needed a morale boost after 3 straight draws in the Premier League. They got that and then some. I think this was the biggest ever win of the modern era for City. Headline of the game, Anton Semenyo. First match following his $85.8 million move from my beautiful War Cherries of Bournemouth. I guess impossible to understand exactly what he's going to do at City, but he did get an assist and a goal and had Pep Lijnders post-game say he had something that we really need. We'll talk more about him in real games, I guess. But it is 2 things are amazing. If Man City sign Mark Gahey in January as they're linked to, rumoured, that would mean Pep Guardiola will have signed an entire starting 11 for over $670 million since last January, which is like a Kardashian-Jenner level makeover.
Yeah, there's been a huge squad rebuild at City, almost unnoticed, strangely, because they've done it over I guess just they've done it in 3 windows rather than just kind of doing it all at once. But they had 4 or 5 last January, another few in the summer, and as you say, Semenyo, and then now potentially Gay. You're looking at the stories that someone like John Stones, who's been a kind of stalwart of the Guardiola era, might leave in the summer. There is a transition happening at City. And I guess you could say that maybe the slight unpredictability in results this season is evidence of that there is still a process ongoing. I'm not sure whether them beating Exeter 10-1 makes them more or less of a threat for anything. But if you look at the depth that they're starting to build, you wonder if maybe they've learnt a little bit of a lesson from Arsenal. God bless. A quick one on Semenyo, by the way. The way he left Bournemouth, not just the 4 goals in 6 games, and the heroic last-second winner against Tottenham in stoppage time, but also taking out a full-page commercial in the Bournemouth local paper, thanking the fans and the club. We don't see this a lot in football, Roy. It's almost proof that there is a right way to leave a club and cement your legacy as a legend there forever. Yeah, I don't know whether he had the chance to have those extra few games because the clubs were negotiating and the deal hadn't just happened. But the fact that he didn't, pick up a convenient injury, the fact that he didn't say, look, I've got a move coming, I don't really want to be risked. Plenty of players would look at that situation and think, I'm going to withdraw myself from selection here. Semenyo played on and he got the goodbye that he'd have wanted and that he deserved, to be honest. That last minute winner against Spurs, it's how you would want to go out.
Second, Exeter City, God bless them. Their manager, Gary Caldwell, said that when they scored their one goal, it was their 19-year-old academy graduate, George Birch, who netted it. By the way, they took 8,000 fans from the southwest tiptoe of Devon to Manchester City for this game. To see their 8,000 fans celebrate was stunning. And Gary Caldwell said, I've never celebrated a goal at 9-0 down in all of my life, which I just love. Like, how many times you have to wonder, well, has Gary Caldwell found himself 9-0 down? But Raw, some consolation, a $335,000 earned from the game. Have to say this, Manchester City, in distinct difference to Crystal Palace, rejected Exeter's request to share more of the gate money. But it will still help the club, who are fan-owned. There's a trust who own Exeter City and went into some heavy debt. I think they got loans of over $800,000 to pay off from the takeover. So even a 10-1 beatdown can be of human good in the third round of the FA Cup, right?
Yeah, and that's the other massive advantage of the Cup, that if your club is lucky enough to get that sort of draw, whatever happens, you do get a massive cash infusion. And there are plenty of teams throughout the kind of League One, League Two, down into the national leagues who are basically kept going or have been able to build stands because of the FA Cup. It does have that impact. Some of us, Rog, would say that a financial model where a team has to rely on the luck of the draw for money that keeps it going is not really ideal, and maybe some more of the money from the Premier League could go down a little bit further. But for Exeter, yeah, it was... I mean, 10-1's not great. It will sting for the players, but the money will come in extremely handy.
Up the Grecians, which is one of my favourite nicknames in all of English football. Oh, talking about hope and false hope. Portsmouth 1, Arsenal 4, and lo, Arsenal became the first top flight side ever to play in 4 different competitions across 10 days. Premier League, Champions League, Carabao Cup, and now FA Cup. Modern football, it's just a diarrhea of games, Raw.
Fortunately, they've got the squad to cope with it, Rog.
Yes, if anybody does, Arsenal do, because that is how they are still chasing all 4 major trophies. Played with a reinforcement midfield, Eza, Wanyeri. They meet Chelsea in the first leg of the League Cup semi-final in midweek. But to this game which fleetingly threatened to be interesting, almost said cup set briefly, Portsmouth. A cellar-dwelling 21st in the Championship, opened quite fearlessly, it's got to be said. They pressed Arsenal into rearguard action. Chaplin swept a shot that Kepa could just parry, and Cody Bishop drove home. Cue vibes of Portsmouth glory and dreams. I do believe life is about celebrating the joy while you have it, even when it lasts just 3 minutes, because that's how long it took for Arsenal in their 10th cup game of the season, undefeated in those games, to strike back, pair of goals from corners, first by our friend, own goal, second by Martinelli. But God bless, it was so funny to watch in the first half, Raw. Arsenal almost saying, Championship Portsmouth, if you want to get to the elite high-level Premier League, here's how you do it. This is the tactic that we play at the big boy level, corners.
Yeah, it's the one thing that Championship League 1, League 2 teams should be able to match Premier League teams at, is set pieces, because they're all roughly the same height. And those elements of the game have always been really important lower down. So it was slightly unusual to see Arsenal's edge play out.
As I watch it, lads, if you want to play at our heights, learn to do the long throw-in thing and how to body bastards at set pieces. It was confounding.
It's a world inverted, Rog. That's the problem.
It is. This is where we are now, modern football. None of the fancy stuff you play in the Championship. Noni Madueke won and then missed a penalty. Dude's got to be careful. Watch this penalty. It's the kind of feckless form that is going to draw the attention of Everton scouts. They love penalties like that. Before he knows it, he'll be lost on the bench at the Big Dick. Martinelli got a hat-trick in the second half. First senior hat-trick, I think, for old Mart. First off, a quickly taken free kick. Second off, a corner. Set piece again. Ole, ole. But a really joyous end to a very difficult week for Gabriel Martinelli. He became football's public enemy number 1, following his, self-admittedly, he's apologised for this, his ill-judged fracas with a terribly injured, as it turns out, Conor Bradley, now out for the season. At the end of Arsenal's draw at Liverpool midweek. It felt like the opposite of the idea of reward and punishment for theologians watching.
Is there a way that karma works backwards, Rog? That if you do a bad thing and apologise for it on Instagram, then really nice things happen? Are we saying that is maybe the way the world works now?
Insta apologies lead to redemption and glory.
Yeah, I think if you just put, as long as you're making content out of it, then you're fine.
This is amazing. Digital content is the new confessional. This is how theologies are founded. And God bless, and also Godspeed to poor Conor Bradley, who is out now for the season. Arsenal set-piece assault sealed the day. Interesting, in a week in which news broke that Arsenal have turned to the world's leading throwing coach, quite legendary Thomas Grönmark, in an effort to start to weaponise and the marginal gains from the throw-in now in their push to win the Premier League. It's all joy for Arsenal. Kai Havertz subbed on, 16-year-old baby Marley Salmon also came on. Even Arsenal's substitutions give them happiness right now. But from North London light to North London darkness, Tottenham 1, Aston Villa 2. Spurs stumbled in after losing to Bournemouth in the league by that last-second Semenyo strike we talked about. Cue Bournemouth fans singing "Champions of Europe." You're having a laugh. And this game began with Villa fans taking the piss. They burst out with a rendition of "Thomas Frank is an Arsenal fan" from the off. If you didn't see this, Coffeegate Raw. Listeners, I'm sure you saw this. Before kick-off at Bournemouth, Thomas Frank was set up by somebody, we do not know who, probably same person who hacked poor Bruno's Twitter account. I mean, just taking over football. Anyway, Thomas Frank photographed strolling around the Vitality Stadium brazenly without knowing that his coffee cup had Arsenal's logo on the front. Everyone originally thought it was a Photoshop and that it was insane in the membrane. Turned out it wasn't Thomas Frank's fault. He apologised. He said he had no idea. But Raw, it is crazy. Results are killers on the field. Style of football matters. But ultimately, to be memed devastatingly like that, as your reign seems to be lolloping towards inevitable soon demise or a painful decision. Third Tottenham season in 6, in which a caretaker manager beckons mid-season. The Arsenal Coffee Cup, that's how this Thomas Frank here is going to be remembered, right? Like Amorim and his tactics boards against Grimsby. Coffee cup optics.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly those images sort of move and also how much they mean, how deep they cut. I think that's really significant that he obviously won't get sacked because of the coffee cup, but it does kind of sum up everything that's happened for him at Tottenham, that sense that everything has gone wrong. And that stuff matters because it's on those images, on the backs of those images, that fans' faith erodes completely. And it does, I don't know, that it's really unfortunate. He must be furious that it happened, but it will kind of become the defining image of his reign, I think. And that's a real shame. I like Thomas Frank. I'd love him to turn it round. As far as we know, as we record, Rog, no decision has been made on his dismissal, but it does feel as though he's very much standing on the brink, and that might be the thing that just nudges him over.
It's so devastating. Whoever did that, you are a bad man. This game, grim for the host. Villa broke the lines, always underrated big buttocks of John McGinn. By the way, a beautiful fan banner the Villa fans travel with, which has a photo of his face and underneath it just says, "Oh, meatball," which I just love. He freed Marlon. He fed the excellent Buendia to crash home. Richarlison, limped off with what could be hamstring knack. Tell coughed up the ball. Rodgers flicked trickery of Buendia interchanged and Rodgers slapped home. Cue the boos. The Spurs fans came to deliver. Tottenham stepped it up a little bit. Their game plan had been like, let Xavi Simons do stuff. Solanke returned for his first appearance since August. Odegaard got them back into it with a goal. But really the most fight Spurs showed came in the full squad brawl at the final whistle. Second straight year on the run. Villa clipped Spurs 2-1 in the FA Cup final. Villa, 13 wins in 15 games. Emery takes this FA Cup journey very seriously. Talks solemnly of the, quote, responsibility of trying to bring a trophy back to Villa. FA Cup they've not won since 57. But as I watch this game, Raw, I realise just how much Villa have totally usurped Spurs' place as the stylish, aspirational Champions League contender. That was Spurs in the Poch era. They've been left for dead. They used to aspire to challenge. Now they seem to be just permanently cowed in the recovery position.
Yeah, Spurs, I think, are in a really interesting point because they have, and it struck me actually on watching that game on Saturday, that they have this huge, beautiful stadium. They have, memories of being in the Champions League. They've got players that they spent tens of millions of pounds on. They have all the pressures of a team that is expected to be winning titles, but they are so far from realising that that they are always going to be falling short, and that is always going to force them, like Manchester United, to make short-term, like immediate knee-jerk decisions. Whereas I guess because Villa have come from further back, Villa are a huge historic club. You could have a very interesting and slightly inside baseball conversation, Roger, about whether Villa or Spurs are historically the bigger team.
People come here for theology, not for that kind of
No, people don't want that nonsense. You could also make some pretty aggravating TikTok content about it that would annoy at least one half of the conversation. But they're sort of similar clubs historically, but because Villa got relegated and sank so low, they've been able to kind of reshape and retool, and they've hit the top flight and then just gone straight through it. And it feels like they are a club going somewhere. They are almost certainly going to be back in the Champions League next season. They'll do quite well in the Champions League. They made the quarterfinals last year. They've got a manager who is good at Europe. And crucially, and I know Spurs won the Europa League last season, but it does feel like Villa are kind of closing in on a trophy. The draw for the FA Cup obviously will determine a lot. If they get Arsenal away, then that'll be a problem. But there's no reason to think they couldn't make the FA Cup final the way they're playing. They're probably favourites for the Europa League. They are a club going places, whereas Spurs do feel like a club trapped in a cycle that just keeps repeating.
January 12th, and Tottenham are out of the Carabao Cup, out of the FA Cup, 14th in the Premier League. The season-boring miracle is essentially a challenge for European football next year. West Ham visit at the weekend and have the chance to do the funniest thing. Let's go to more joy, though. Wrexham 3, Nottingham Forest 3. Wrexham win 4-3 on penalties, back in time to Friday night. Proper FA Cup tie, end-to-end, sluggers slugging. Sean Dyche, has to be said, left out a lot of his first string, saving them for the relegation dogfight to come. Wrexham sat back, soaked up the early exchanges. Ryan Reynolds watching gloriously, wearing a custom jersey, just with the word El Henny on the back. Rob's name without the Mac attached. Wrexham waited for Forest to make a mistake and pounce, which they did twice in the first half alone. 2-0 half-time, dreamland. Premier League, you're having a laugh. The chant that rang out the Stoke Kairas. Dyche, by the way, quite brilliantly used the post-game to call out the mediocre players that his director of football, Edu, has brought in. He didn't seem that arsed. He's just like, yeah, not my fault. Terrible footballers. He threw on Morgan Gibbs-White, Nicholas Dominguez and Nico Williams, and their quality made a massive difference. Forest battled their way back into the game from 2-0 and then 3-1 down, ended 3-3 to penalties, in which Arthur Okonkwo, a beautiful man, he's been on this show many times, 24-year-old goalkeeper, kid who left Arsenal's academy. A lot of people laughed. He'd come through with Bukayo Saka, come through with Flo Balogun, Yunus Musa, and joined Wrexham in League Two. Why are you doing that? Why would you go there? It's career-ending. But he's been one of the most dominant forces in their rise to the brink of the Premier League that he intends to play in. 2 massive saves in the penalty shootout to send Wrexham into the 4th round. Their first win against a Premier League side since 1999. To me, Raw, this was optically a massive moment for the club since Rob and Ryan took over. There's been a lot. Nearly 5 years ago, they've ended the 15-year hiatus from the Football League. They've achieved 3 quite delirious consecutive promotions. But this was hope is a waking dream level crap. The optics, the echo of history, the sense of what might be to come for the town, this team, the entire region of North Wales, Raw. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I suppose first and foremost, it's like a glimpse of the Premier League. It's not. I mean, Nottingham Forest are in they're in the relegation battle, but we think of them as a Premier League club. They're one of the biggest clubs in the country. It was the sort of occasion that Wrexham will be hoping for.
That's it.
Psychologically, I think it's probably really important for the team to be able to beat Forest, even with changes made. You're still dealing with as we said with Palace, like you're still dealing with a load of internationals. That's what they're throwing on. They're not putting the academy out. And I think that's probably really important for the rest of the season. But I think the other thing that's interesting is this was a Friday night game in the FA Cup 3rd round. There are people watching, certainly in Britain, who will have been watching that game, who are probably sort of aware that Wrexham have got Hollywood ownership and sort of aware that Wrexham are coming through the leagues. You access a much more mainstream audience on FA Cup 3rd round weekend, and they will have seen the Stoke Kairas going nuts at beating Forest. They'll have seen this thrilling game. They'll have seen Ryan Reynolds, and suddenly you kind of permeate the mainstream a little bit more. I think that the FA Cup does that in a way that we don't fully recognise because we're too in football. but it suddenly exposes your story to lots and lots of other people. It felt big to me, Wrexham beating Forest. It felt moderately predictable, but it felt big.
It felt big to me, but for your first point, like optically, we can do this. We will get there and we will beat teams. It did feel like, wow, we are real. Remember, this is a team who, 9th place in the Championship, just a point off the Premier League playoff, 5 games undefeated, all comps. What Phil Parkinson, their manager, who started with them in the National League, is doing it's heroic, remarkable, transcendent stuff. Lots of talk now about January transfer incomings. If you will, the Premier League can be no dream, please God. 2 other games. Grimsby 3, Western-super-Mare 2. God bless 6th tier National League South, Western-super-Mare. I think top 3 English town names that sound most like a 1970s prog rock band, Raw.
Yeah, I think Bognor Regis could probably do a couple of kind of critically acclaimed concept albums. That feels like a thing that might happen. But Western-super-Mare, it's sort of it's a glam rock. It's heavy metal infused. That's what they're offering.
Western-super-Mare definitely have a flautist. They are a team, we should say, part-timers, also builders, teachers, labourers, lecturers, facing Grimsby, 4th tier fish lovers who beat Manchester United in the Carabao Cup in August and have now gone further than United in both the Carabao and the FA Cup. I'm just saying, happiness at Wolves. It is possible. Jurgen Strand-Larsen netted a hat-trick as the Wanderers continued their Wolves naissance. They thumped League Two side Shrewsbury Town 6-1. Leeds came from behind to win 3-1 at Derby. Aaron Ramsdale, shootout hero, as Newcastle edged out beautiful Bournemouth in a real thriller. On penalties, the on-loan Southampton keeper saved from Ev Nielsen, Alex Jimenez, and I think TK to seal a 7-6 shootout win. And West Ham came from behind in extra time to avoid the humiliation of losing to Queen's Park Rangers. Crisis averted! ... for today. At Glenn, a West Ham fan in our MIB Discord said, I'm now rooting for a West Ham Macclesfield final. And I read that and I was like, not so fast, Glenn, because on form, 6th tier Macclesfield would absolutely batter West Ham, wouldn't they, Rook?
Yeah, I think West Ham and Wolves are both quite interesting because Wolves, who've essentially got not very much to play for anymore, might as well have a real crack at the FA Cup, Rog, to be honest. Wigan won the FA Cup in 2013, the year they went down. Wolves don't even have to worry about trying to survive, despite the fact that they're suddenly quite good.
I know, I watch Wolves and I'm just like, when you know you're already dead, you have nothing to lose.
They're a free radical. They can do what they like. Whereas West Ham, I suppose that win against QPR staves off the sense of impending crisis. But if the last thing they need is to get distracted by the FA Cup, that if ever a team needed to get knocked out of the FA Cup so it could think about what really matters, it's West Ham. But then I suppose maybe there is a psychological benefit to winning, just to winning a game.
Oh my God, talking about winning. By the way, Liverpool round off the FA Cup third round. They play this evening against Barnsley, team languishing 17th in League One. The FA Cup now the sole focus for silverware for this season. On the slot, of course, made massive changes in his club's Carabao exit and was massacred by fans. I doubt he will dare do it again.
Yeah, he seems to have alluded to the fact that he won't repeat the trick he pulled off at Plymouth last year and put out a team that's never played together before. I think there will be some changes. I'm going, Rog. I'm going in a private capacity rather than for work. Ed, my little boy, has asked to go to Anfield for a night game, and he has been allowed to stay up late to go and watch Barnsley. And I had this sort of sense of dread about it. And then I remembered why this morning, because Barnsley knocked Liverpool out of the FA Cup in 2008, 2-1.
Yeah. You're such a good dad.
I'm not sure why I'm putting myself through this or putting him through it.
Taking your son to a game where you know his little heart is going to be shattered with the trauma that he'll carry with him and pass on to his children for generations. You're a great dad, Raw. Which leads us, God, finally, to the last right on Everton's 2025-26 season. Everton won. Sunderland won. Sunderland win 3-0 on penalties. I said depleted Everton side. We've got to acknowledge this. Michael Keane out for hair pulling-ish. Jack Grealish out for checks notes. Sarcastic clapping red card. I honestly tuned in to watch us play Sunderland in this one. Partly with excitement. partly with fear of the season ending, but mostly just to see what kind of red card Everton could conjure. It's like, which player will make love to their teammate on the field in public, or we are to red cards at this point, Raw. You know, the slapping one we did of our own team, all that stuff. We are what Marty Supreme was to film marketing. We are constantly pushing the boundaries of what has to be considered possible for a red card before we invented new ones.
It's nice to have a thing, Rog.
I know.
It's nice to have a thing that you do, a reason to keep watching.
Which makes me think one of the Everton players is behind Bruno Fernandes hacking. They're just training for the.
Do you think there could be like a Polymarket angle on it?
On the hacking or on Everton?
No, on the red cards. Like, I don't fully understand how Polymarket works, but I'm sure you could make money off saying, will a player get sent off for pulling someone's hair?
Yeah, will one of the players pull out one of his internal organs with the world watching? I don't know how Polymarket works either, Rob, but I do believe Polymarket is to explain for 99% of what we're trying to spend a lot of time pulling our hair out over, says the bald man. Sunderland took the lead on the half hour, long throw, not dealt with. And Lefay, the one man you didn't want to be on the ball, apart from a penalty, because that dreadful Panenka memory still lingering from last weekend. But my God, the way he shaped his body to arc the ball in was utterly stunning on the volley. It was just a lethal side foot spiral, artful. It was astonishing. Composure, technique, poetry. And I was like, oh, there goes that dream again. There goes Everton's season. We hadn't conjured a shot on goal in the first half. We were booed off at half time. And you looked at the bench. I think 7 outfield players on the bench had 25 games experience between them. And bloody Tieno Barry had 23 of those 25. This was the rawest bench you will ever bench in your life. We went 2 up top down the stretch. Looked like we were sinking without trace, without any fight. 1 effort on target, I think. But then the ref interceded, gave a very soft penalty to Everton, even I admit that, for a foul on the quite bright cameo of Asnu. Garner scored. Game went out to penalties. Garner came up again, went the other way and was blocked by Roofs. Really quite weak penalty, to be clear. But Raw, did you watch the Everton penalties?
I'm not saying them, no.
Oh my God. Don't watch them unless you like kind of like snuff films. Tieno Barry stepped up. My God, his technique. He did like this skip, a no look, and then essentially unleashed a soft, sweet back pass to the goalkeeper. I mean, Tieno Barry plays football. I don't know how much you've watched him, but he looks like a man who's just discovered football and learned how to play only by watching it on the EA Sports FIFA.
That's very odd, because Tieno Barry was quite good at football in Spain, and yet the Everton seems to have got inside him somehow.
So quickly, the Everton is going. By the way, if Tieno, you're listening, if you actually try and fart the ball out of your anus next time, which I would recommend, it will go harder and faster towards the target. I had never seen a worse penalty than Barry's for Everton ever. So respect Beto then for instantly one-upping it. I mean, bro, these men are professional footballers. They're strikers. For 3 Everton players to completely just abort mission from the penalty spot. I will tell you this is the thing that summed it up. Many Everton fans left the stadium, I crap you not, while Beto walked up to the spot for the decisive penalty.
Well, I suppose, that maybe isn't a damning indictment of Beto. Maybe that, it's you've already missed 2. The chances are the maths, they're doing a little bit of statistical calculation in their heads. They're thinking, well, this has only happened 7.4% of the time that a team's come back from this position, so we might as well start the long walk back into town. Oh, do you think they were more like, is he taking it out of his anus? No, all right, no, this isn't one of the anus penalties, so we're not interested. That's a decision point. Anus, no, out of here. By the way, I've got to admit, I'm always back. So I get that players who don't often take penalties must get very nervous in penalty shootouts, and they maybe don't have like practice techniques for executing under pressure. But surely in that situation, you just kick it hard. That's what always baffles me. Hard. These are strikers, Ro. Yeah. These are strikers. These guys have taken penalties before. It was remarkable. And the pain for me was that it's the end of another journey, another season without glory. And it stings. We won a lot, listeners. Everton won a lot, believe it or not, when I was a kid. When we won the FA Cup for the last time, 1995, I did not know that would be it. I write this in my book that when you're a kid, you think World Cups are, just infinite. And the older you get,
you realise, and I realised this in this moment, Raw, when that penalty from Beto just trickled limply and we were knocked out, I turned to my kid, I said, son, our days are numbered. Each failure is a tick towards my own death. As Philip Larkin once said, life is slow dying.
So the one thing I would say for Everton before I make this point is that it's unlucky to get another Premier League team in the draw. That is slightly unfortunate. But you were at home. I would have thought for teams like Everton, even maybe for Spurs, for those Premier League teams that have gone out in like the first hurdle of the FA Cup, given that it happened after Palace last season, I think that kind of makes it hurt even more because you've seen what it can mean.
Why never us? Why never? Yeah. How I feel about the US men? Why never us, Morocco? Why never us doing an Iceland? Why never us doing a Wales? Why never us? That's what hurt. But I also know, Raw, I'm going to die soon. This is what it is. I may never watch Everton win something again in my lifetime. When you're a kid, you think, oh, there's always next season. There might not be.
Are they staging another Florida Cup?
God, I got to get it. Why don't I stay? That's
you should stage a Florida Cup.
I love this idea. Let's get on it, Florida. Who's with me? All right, let's finish with a letter from our mailbag, which is really bulging at the moment. meninblazers@gmail.com. Write to us. It makes our week. I try and reply to every message I can. Oliver Gotch wrote this beauty. Take it away, Ro.
Hi, Rog and Rory. I'm a huge fan of the pod. As a Liverpool fan, Rory keeps my unbridled hopes in check. Not a problem, you're welcome. And Rog reminds me it would always be worse. I currently live behind the orange curtain here in Southern California.
Chocolate orange.
Right, and I recently had the good fortune to travel to Spain and watch 3 matches at Atletico Madrid, Camp Nou, and the third, and the experience that sits with me the most, was my trip to the Nuevo Estadio de los Cármenes, the home of Granada CF. I watched Granada draw their second division game against AD Ceuta, and I saw 20,000 fans grow in frustration as they perceived the referee making every decision against them. Was it Anthony Taylor? It got to the point of a fan hitting a chair in front of him so hard that it came loose from the metal frame. And in a perfect example of learned behaviour, his son hit the chair in front of him, to much less effect. As the match finished and a plastic tunnel was extended to protect the officials while the home fans luckily hurled only insults, I was thinking of that furious fan and his son's copycat routine. My question to you, Rog and Rory, and apologies for the long way round of getting here, have any of your children picked up any of your bad viewing habits? Cheers, and up the Reds, Oliver.
Oh, what a question, Oliver. There is an old English saying, which I write about in my book, that English football at its heart is a story of parents and their children. Raw, I mean, we just talked about it. As an Everton fan, I think I passed on only bad memories and traumas to my kids, like that old Philip Larkin line, man hands on misery to man, it deepens like a coastal shelf. So why don't you take it?
Well, presumably the bad viewing habit you've passed on to your kids is to watch Everton. That's the primary.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's the primary thing you've done.
Yeah, it's toxic. So here's some fentanyl.
This actually hits on something that I'm battling at the moment, Rog, to be fair. So when Ed was younger, he's only 8, but when he was sort of 4 or 5, I didn't want him getting too upset by Liverpool losing. So I would occasionally say to him, if they were playing a game that I thought they might lose, it doesn't matter that much if they lose this one. So if it was the Cup, I'd say it doesn't matter that much because it's the Cup. If it was the Champions League and they'd already qualified, I'd be like, well, it doesn't really matter that much if they lose this because they've already qualified. If it was the Champions League and they were already, basically out, I'd say, well, it's a free hit, doesn't matter. And he's really internalised this. So now, before every game, he says, but Dad, it doesn't matter if they lose this one, does it? And I'm like, and I've reached the point where I tend to be like, no, it does, it matters. It's worse if they lose. We don't want them to lose. There are certain games where Arsenal away, if they were to lose that, you'd accept it. There's certain games where a draw is a good point. The Everton derby away from home, draw is always a good point. But he seems to have decided that on every game, it doesn't matter if they lose. So the other day when I said
validation, he's looking for you, like, Dad,
he's looking for reassurance.
It's paining me, but Dad, it's okay, isn't it? The pain.
No, he's looking for reassurance, and I do not want to provide him with it. I refuse to provide him with it. He's old enough now to understand it does matter if they go out of the FA Cup to Barnsley. That's embarrassing. You don't want that to happen, so it does matter. It might not matter as much as losing the Premier League on the final day or losing a Champions League final, but it does matter.
My God.
And so I think the bad habit that my son has picked up from me, Rog, is overly rationalising events.
God bless. That's remarkable. I mean, what is it? Freud writes about, is it in the book Moses, where he writes about how the moment from childhood to becoming a grown-up in your own right is the moment you realise your parents. Mostly he writes about fathers, obviously. The moment you realise your dad has clay feet, which is kind of where you are with your beautiful... My dad always used to say when Everton would concede, he'd always say, "Son, it only takes a second to score a goal." That was he was trying to put a bright side on it. And when Everton were down famously in the derby 5-0, the Ian Rush game when he just battered us, they were like, we were into extra time, we were 5-0 down, and I still truly believed. I was like, Dad, it only takes a second to score a goal, right? As if, like, as long as there were 5 seconds left, we could still get back into this one. And my dad, in agony and pain, I write about this in the book actually, just turned around to me and goes, "Don't be so bloody stupid, son." And I realised the extent of his own agony and how much he truly, really cared. Look, when I look at my own kids, these kids are Everton fans. These kids are Chicago White Sox fans. They are Chicago Bears fans. That's a lot of misery I've passed on. As you say, that's probably the biggest parenting mistake I made. Sadness, futility, desperation, trauma. I've given them all of it. So on Saturday, my family watched Everton sink in the morning, and then obviously I love Bournemouth. They crashed out the FA Cup too. I was in a terrible mood Saturday night. I can't lie. The Chicago Bears were in their epic playoff rumble with rivals Green Bay. I was braced for disaster and disappointment. I could see no hope. I was watching with my kids. The spectre, the first half, if you watch the game, dear listeners, fulfilled every worst outcome. Not a single facet of the game for the Bears was clicking. Into the fourth quarter, I'm sure you all know America, that historic, almost a fever dream, that delirious comeback. God bless you, Caleb Williams. I immediately just, people kept, when nice things happen to my sports team, which is I hear from more people than when my dad died. And I just in the moment, I just sent everybody back a photo of Da Pope. Immediately, his prayers lifting the team, that comeback. Raw, I don't know. When the Bears won, the name of the emotion I experienced, I can only say I loved it. It was beautiful. But here's what's amazing, and what I realised. My kids have only known darkness through sports fandom. And when the Chicago Bears won, I looked around. All of my kids were either on the couch or on the floor sobbing.
Really?
So they sobbed harder when we lose than if we win. And if that's not really a symbol of the trauma I've given to them in its depths, I don't know what is.
But then surely you can flip that and say it's all been worth it. It's all been worth it for that one moment. That's what you've given them. You've given them the gift of a high that outweighs the lows.
Psychologists listening and trauma specialists listening, please tell me what my kids were experiencing in that moment. I'd love, genuinely, meninblazers@gmail.com.
Maybe they'd invested in Polymarket on a Packers win. Maybe that's why they were crying.
Maybe one of my kids is the Bruno Fernandes hacker. Bring on next weekend. And the LA Rams. And the darkness that is sure to ensue. I want it in the face. Thanks for your letter, Oliver. You're a beautiful human being. Keep writing to all of us here at meninblazers@gmail.com. I do, as I said, try and answer every single letter that comes in. That's it for today. I'm in New York City this week. I've got to tape the audio book of my book. Have you ever done that, Raw? It's like trying to run a marathon every day for 6 days with just your voice. It's shattering.
They won't let people from Yorkshire read audiobooks.
Do they not? Legally?
No, legally it's banned.
Oh, please, please, please pre-order that beauty. I know it's a pain up the arse. Just take a quick second. Don't put it off. Do it now. I will thank you in so many different ways in the next couple of weeks. We've got a Bukayo Saka television show debuting on NBC Sports Peacock this weekend, January 17th, in which I got to drive around North London with Bukayo, which is stunning. As are you, Rory Smith, you beautiful human being. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure just revelling in the magic of the cup, Roger, and I'm sorry about Everton. I'm sorry.
God bless. I mean, again, psychologists, the Chicago Bears, what was that for my kids? This is Rog saying, let's not take a second of watching football together for granted, and courage.